I would say what they have done is what they should be doing, and that is essentially creating the environment on draft night at number 7 where they can take the best player available, and they don't have to think about need at all. Washington added Leo Chenal yesterday, and then this morning it was announced that they added New England linebacker Von Chaisson. He was also one of those kind of second tier after Devin Lloyd. You know, I would say after Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, there was then, a group of guys that were either right there with Walker and Dean and maybe behind Lloyd, or maybe slightly behind Dean and Walker, and those guys included Chenal and Chaisson. So I really like Chenal as a player. I really liked Chaisson's 2025 season. He had an excellent 2025 season. But his story is an interesting one. You know, he got drafted actually at the end of the first round, or latter third of the first round by Jacksonville in 2020. The COVID draft out of LSU. And he didn't really, play well, and he was injured a bunch in Jacksonville. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. And then he signed in 2024 with Carolina, but was released before the season started. And then he was picked up by the Raiders, and he was on the practice squad just as recently as 2024. Then, finally promoted to the active roster sometime in the middle of that season in Vegas, or it was a little bit earlier in the season because I'm looking at it. He played 15 games, ended up with 5 sacks, and that gave him the opportunity for the 1-year deal last year in New England, where he was on a very good defense and played really good football. I mean, this was a very good season for Chaisson, who really looked like a first-round bust. That's kind of the trajectory of the career. Was, here he was at 25 years old and nearly out of football in 2024. The Raiders give him a shot. He plays pretty well, ends up in New England for a year, and ends up with 7.5 sacks. Big-time quarterback hit number. Really good defensive team. This is a guy that is much more pass rusher than anything else. Chenal is everything. Like, Chenal to me is a better overall player, a more versatile player. But Chaisson can get after the quarterback. And so now you've had a free agency period in which they've gone defense, defense, defense. Oweh, Chenal, Settle, Robertson, and now Chaisson. I said when the season ended, I'd like to see 3 to 4, maybe even 5 starters and another 2 to 3 major contributors. Washington in the first 2 days or 2+ days of free agency, they've added 2 edge pass rushers, definitely a 3-down player, and more than just a pass rusher in Oweh. They've added an off-ball linebacker that can get after the quarterback and is a 3-down player. They've added a D lineman that may be their nose and their base and Settle, and they've added a nickel corner in Amik Robertson. 5 defensive players. Oh, by the way, they brought back the best or one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. They missed on Pierce. I'm happy about that. They missed on Linderbaum. I'm not so happy about that. Somebody texted me during the break. Who texted me? My buddy Nick said, "Can we still get Linderbaum now that Crosby's back? And will they nix the Linderbaum deal? Will the Raiders do some?" Apparently not. Apparently they've got plenty of money and they're going to stick to the deals that they've made, and the commitments they made since Monday at noon. But I would have loved Linderbaum here. And I even said yesterday, even, the money wouldn't have been that big of a deal in the larger scheme of things. That's a position right now I'm a little bit concerned about. Center. We'll see, how it plays out over the next few months. But the 5 defensive players that they've added leads to this, because you've got 5. You have, without question, 3 starters you've added, in Owe, Chenal, Chaisson, and, you've got a nickel corner who's going to be out there a lot in Robertson, and you've got Settle. He may be your starting nose tackle. We'll see. He's certainly going to be a part of the rotation with Kinlaw and with Payne. And they're not done yet. There's no way they're done. I'd still love to see another corner. Love to see a corner with some size. But the question that I think that you have to ask yourself now is, since they've added 5 defensive players, 3 starters for sure, and certainly in total 5 major contributors, more likely than not, to the defensive side of the ball where they were horrible. Not to mention you've hired a new defensive coordinator. Hadn't done it before, but we'll see how that goes. They've certainly recognized defense. It has to be better. It can't be what it was last year or even in 2024 to expect, Jaden and the offense to outscore everybody for you to end up having a really good season. They're probably not done on defense, but they've made some progress on defense. I think we can all, even those of you who hate Adam Peters, want him fired, think he's a dope, think that free agency's been a disaster, called it 5 minutes into it that it's a disaster. Even you'd have to admit they have been active on the defensive side of the ball. They've been active overall. I mean, Jalen Phillips, Linderbaum, Pierce, Dobbs signed with the Patriots. They were apparently in on Dobbs. Yes, we want to see a receiver. We need another playmaker. Running back, they didn't get that. But because they haven't signed a receiver yet or a running back yet, but they have signed all of these defensive players, I think the obvious question is, have they cleared the deck enough for them to select either Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Love, whichever one's available at number 7, whichever one is the highest on their board? Here's what I would say. I would say what they have done is what they should be doing, and that is essentially creating the environment on draft night at number 7 where they can take the best player available, and they don't have to think about need at all. Obviously, that doesn't include left tackle. It doesn't include quarterback, but it still includes edge pass rusher. I'm not passing on David Bailey because I've got Owe and Chaisson. Chaisson's deal is a 1-year deal worth $12 million. I'm not passing on. I'm a little bit iffy on Reese because of the production, but I'm not passing on Bailey. And I'll tell you what, it'd be a hard, difficult decision on Bain if he's there. But they put themselves into the position, which I think you go into a draft. I mean, Charlie Casserly, I just remember over and over again saying all the time, the biggest mistakes you make is when you draft for need. You cannot do that. You have to draft the best players available on your board. But I think with 5 defensive players so far in free agency and a long way to go before we get to the end of April, I think they've cleared the deck a little bit for the possibility of an offensive player at number 7. And I've said this because didn't we take calls on this, Max, like a week ago when I said, I think the question was, would you be upset if they took an offensive player at number 7? I think we did that one. And I think we also did the one, if I told you they did take an offensive player, who do you hope it is?
Yep.
And I said Tate. I actually really believe in Tate. And I think Love is really good. Don't get me wrong. I think he's going to be an excellent NFL back. I just don't think number 7 overall is the right spot for him, because if I'm not getting Bijan Robinson at number 7, I'm not taking a running back at number 7. If I'm not getting Christian McCaffrey at number 7, I'm not taking a running back at 7. And I think Jeremiah Love is outstanding and is going to be really good. I just don't think he's going to be them. It is interesting, right, that David Blau came from Detroit, where they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs very high. Obviously, in San Francisco, they valued the running back position because they traded a boatload for Christian McCaffrey. So if there is a belief in that building that Jeremiah Love is going to be the next great back in the NFL, you've got a general manager that believes in that position in a major way and tried, we think, there was some interest, certainly in Rico Dowdle and maybe even Kenneth Walker III. So Jeremiah Love is certainly in play. Carnell Tate is certainly in play. And I think they would have been in play anyway had they been the best player available. But now you really kind of feel like 5 defensive players in the first 48 hours of free agency, or we're coming up on the first 48 hours of free agency. They needed, as I said when the season ended, they needed 4 to 5 starters. They needed another 2 minimum contributors. They needed half of their defense to be new faces when they took the field in September, and they're well on their way to achieving that. And you may not like Oweh for the money. You may think that Chenal or Chaisson, you could have done better. It should have been Lloyd and Dean, or it should have been Hendrickson. But they're adding quality players for quality deals right now. The Chaisson deal to me is a 1-year deal. I don't think I said this. I think the Chaisson deal is a 1-year deal for $12 million, in part because he's really a 1-year player at this point in his career. And for a very talented and well-coached defensive football team in New England, that team was nasty at the end of the year defensively, and he was a problem as a pass rusher. You got 2 edges, man. You got 2 edges, and you got Dorrance Armstrong hopefully coming back off of what was clearly his best start to a career. You've got Dietrich Wise coming back. Absolutely, an edge-setting run defender. You freed yourself up, or you're on your way to freeing Frankie Louvu up a little bit to be, that kind of player, maybe even, a player that becomes instrumental in the Durante Jones attack, a guy that you can't, really get a beat on in terms of where he's lining up. Is he coming? Is he in coverage? I mean, I think they're doing the right things. The Robertson, other than what's been said about him, tough, competitive, better than the numbers say. Tim Settle's always been steady.